hoping to ask the panel last night, the closing panel. However, there wasn't enough time. So it isn't really directly related to the United Nations campus, but more so the Sustainable Development Goals. So following up from the release of the United Nations climate change research that was released around this time last year, it was quite grave. Obviously, we saw that climate change really is an issue that, unless we address now, is going to devastate our future. And then I see that in the questions that we've seen in the data, that is not being seen as a main concern to citizens. How is the United Nations going to address that, knowing that it is an issue, but also knowing, because of that data, that we're not seeing that the people care about it?
Yes, as you may know, in terms of the Millennium Development Goals, which preceded these, so far, still after 15 years, some 80% or more of United States citizens have never even heard of the MDGs. So it is very difficult. I would say that what the United Nations does and is, it's an organization that creates platforms. It's not really so much a service organization. Ahmed spoke about this earlier, that there are more employees working for McDonald's than there are working at the United Nations. And often when conservatives and others who bash the UN say, why isn't it doing more, especially in the area of being a great megaphone for the ideas that come out of this body, Ahmed has said, look, if you really want great service, go to McDonald's. But what we do here at the UN is create platforms. It's very difficult to both spend most of your time creating the platform and have a very robust marketing arm. I think what they hope is that when they create a platform like the MDGs or the SDGs, it will be picked up by nation states, and that those nation states will promote it to their peoples. I'm just guessing by hearing, I'm not sure, are you a U.S. citizen? Canada, U.S. or Canada. Many of these goals, the MDGs and the SDGs, are aimed at the developing world. And the challenge that the UN has faced is that often these goals are very well known within the developing world and not known at all in the developed world. So we know that is the issue, and the UN doesn't have the capacity always to be both the megaphone as well as the creator of policy. So we had someone from the UN Foundation here before on Sam Vagar and Ravi Kakara's panel, and what the UN Foundation has done has taken a portion of its money and created something called the Better World Fund. And the Better World Fund is aimed almost exclusively at U.S. and Canadian citizens to try to do what the UN has not really been able to do, and that's market what it has put out there. When I often speak in the developing world, I'm treated sometimes like a rock star because people know very well about things like the Youth Assembly and what we're trying to do in terms of global development. And then I speak sometimes in what are called sort of red state regions of the United States, for example, and there sometimes I can't get out of the state quick enough. Someone once said to me in a forum like this, the people you meet when you don't have a gun. So, you know, it is very uneven. And I think we in the developed world often don't see the benefit of the SDGs because we're among those, the US, China, Brazil, India, who are creating most of the pollution, and we're not that interested in learning about how we're going to have to radically change our lives. Sorry? Oh, I thought someone yelled out another country. But I think that that's an important point for us, that maybe sometimes we just don't want to hear these things because they're very difficult in our lives to make those changes. But it's a great question, and I think people like you and me who are aware of these, it's kind of incumbent upon us to take a responsibility to move those things forward. But thank you. It's a great question. It's one I certainly struggle with myself. Anyone else? Before I ask Manas, are you here? There you are.